Welcome to On the Go with AAUW. In today's show, we take a look at projects that reflect upon personal achievements and family stories. Our focus will be on the family stories and our guests today who have participated. Joining me is Shushmita Mazumdar and another special guest who will come a little later. Welcome, Sush.
Hi.
Let's start by telling our viewers about Living Legends. What is Living Legends?
Living Legends of Alexandria is a project. It's an ongoing, not-for-profit project that honors, identifies, and chronicles the work of people in Alexandria who are making history right now, today. And a part of that Living Legends project is Family Legends, where we do a similar thing with children and families, getting them to identify people in their families who might have done something special and writing down that story and making it into a storybook.
So how did you get involved with this project?
Okay, so I met Nina Tessara, who does the Living Legends of Alexandria, at an event where we were talking to entrepreneurs who were artists, actually, who were learning to be businesswomen. And we were telling them about the importance of collaborating, working with others in the community. And Nina, who works with, Living Legends being mostly about adults, said, if I wanted to work with kids, I would probably talk to Sush because she works with kids. And we just looked at each other and we said, oh, we got to talk.
Oh, okay. So that kind of started, you hadn't really thought about doing it, but it was almost a natural offshoot of that Living Legends. So, so how's it working with children? That's always a fascinating process. You can just tell me about your involvement.
Right. So what I do is we got these children who are already going to a rec center where they do after-school programs, and we asked them if they wanted to make storybooks and write stories, and then we had questionnaires for them to take home and to interview their parents and grandparents and ask them, is there anybody in our family who has a cool story or who did something great or, whatever.
So is it a little tough to get started at first? Do you have to motivate them, or do they say, oh, I can't think of anything, and so you have to send them back? How long was the program? Maybe?
The program went for about 6 weeks. And we met once a week for 1.5 hours.
Okay.
And, children mostly like to write fiction. So it was hard to tell them, no, it has to be a story from your life or your grandmother or your mom, something like that. And then since all my stories are nonfiction, I would read from my books or tell them, what happened to me when I was little, and they'd say, oh, okay, my grandma once told me, or something like that.
So by sharing your own personal story, by sharing your story, you provided an example for the children. And so it made it a little bit easier for them maybe to understand what you wanted them to do. Were they intimidated by having to interview people in their family?
They hadn't done it. None of them had done that before. And, going through a questionnaire, and I know there was one girl, she said, I called my grandma and I asked her where she grew up, and that was just interesting on its own because she grew up, in Alabama or something. So and then when the kids shared among themselves what they found out, then that encouraged them to say, hey, I've heard a story like this in my family, and so on.
And also, too, that's so interesting just to hear the stories. I would assume that at first they verbally talked about someone in their family, and then could you explain a little bit about the process? So you go and talk to grandma or uncle or auntie or to mom or dad. How does it evolve into a book?
Right. So, once they have the story, I give them handouts at every session where first it's like the outline of the story, and then we write the beginning, the middle, and the end. So along the way, they're learning all the elements of story writing. Then we say, okay, now you're going to add a setting. What is a setting? And I'll read from books to them, so they know a setting describes a place, or, how do you describe other characters? How do you add dialogue? So we do little bits of this along the way. And then in the end, they write an author's bio. And Nina comes in, since she's a photographer, and she teaches the children about the importance of photographs and how that is part of a book. And she takes their picture and they write their bio.
Right. So there's a visual component. That's what I wanted to know. Do the children actually do any of the visual component part of the book? Do they create their covers or more or less assemble a book without it being, perfectly done, but it's their work, and you give suggestions. Could you explain that a little bit?
That is, children tell a lot of stories through art. So they're happiest making pictures. It's getting them to handwrite the book that's hard. But we were constantly illustrating our books. So there's one page of text, one picture, one page of text, one picture. And then we stack them all. And then and we bind it, and then they make their cover. So they know their entire story, and then they decide, based on the entire story and all the pictures that they've already done, what they would like to be on the cover. And then when we did the cover, I might introduce a collage to them, and we would tear paper and make the picture that way. We also, the rec center we worked in, there were books. It was the library or the reading room. So one girl, I remember, she said, I'm writing a story about my grandma's house in Ethiopia, but I don't remember what it looked like because I was so little. So we looked through books and found pictures of, houses in Africa, and I kept asking her, is this what it looked like? And she's like, no. And then we would flip pages, and all the children were involved, and they were all like, what did her grandma's house look like?
It also involved some research on the children's part. It sounds like it involved a lot of different skills. I'm sure that it helped them in their whole educational process because they were writing and reading and using language, and it was just a very well-rounded experience. I want to ask you too, what age group are you talking about?
So this, we look at kids who are willing, at an age where they're willing to write and are happy to write. So we were looking at 7 and up, and we were working with elementary school kids who came to the rec center. So they were already there, and we made a flyer about the project and let them know that if they wanted, they had to take that home, ask their parents, because, the parents are involved in this. They have to help tell the story. So we got them to sign off. So they gave permission
to be involved.
To be involved and to tell the story and to let us, look at the book and read it.
I was wondering about the reactions of the children when you said, we're going to make a book. Were they really excited, or they a little bit standoffish?
No. They are familiar with making books. Like, they do that in school. But this one was very handmade and very completely done by them. So it's not like they're typing something up and it's going off and coming back as a book. They're writing it by hand, they're binding it, they're actually doing the coloring, and so they were very excited.
They're hands-on.
We're going to make it ourselves.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, I think it was fun.
Women in the same place, same time. It was more or less a time they knew that time was set aside to work on this particular project. Did you find that there might have been some difficulty in doing some of these stories because, unfortunately, maybe some of the family stories have had, children have had some challenges within the family, children that perhaps come from areas where there's war or conflict. Did you find that sometimes their stories were difficult to tell?
Sometimes the stories, sometimes children didn't know a lot about their grandparents and where they're from or where their parents came from. So I did notice that, and when it came to that, it was okay for them to write a story about themselves when they were little. So we allowed for that because we can't force people to tell stories.
But there was a lot of flexibility
involved. There was a lot of flexibility, and sometimes the parents are not really answering their questions. So they said, oh, I asked them, but they didn't say anything. On the other hand, I also found children who wanted to tell stories that might be a little uncomfortable to hear or to read, and so the other kids would tell them, oh, no way that happened, and she's like, yeah, you want to ask my mom? She's sitting outside. So, sometimes they really
a little backup.
Yeah, a little backup support.
Right. Yeah. And so I guess that all ties into the creativity that you saw with the children, that somebody was maybe a little bit more vocal as far as they're a little bit more aggressive in their interviewing. Maybe there were some that wanted to focus more on the actual book making process. So I was just wondering, did you notice that all the children just kind of showed their creativity in different ways?
Right, and there were some children who were, of course, very natural and just went into this project effortlessly, and it was harder for some kids, but it was really great that they still wanted to do it. So for some of them, there were more pictures in their book because it was easier for them to make the pictures than to write the story. But in their pictures, I would ask them, so what is that? And is that a painting on the wall? Who made that painting? And she'd say, oh, I went to my mom's house in Colombia, and there was all these paintings on the wall, and they were done by my mom. So she couldn't write it all out, but she made the whole picture. So we would see that, and then there were some kids who would be very creative with, their collages. They'd tell me, I saw a picture which is like this. How do I make that? So we would try things out, and I remember one.
So you offer some suggestions.
Right, we would go through the books and say, which book are you talking about, or what did it look like?
Well, mostly drawings.
Drawings, and we would color using color pencils, and we would do collage with all kinds of handmade paper and tearing paper and stuff.
So
and
many of them, I guess, were really introduced to art in that aspect, or different facets of
Right, we've done some bits of that in art class, but I try to make it different. I try
and
to
more
make that
personal.
Right,
I mean, it's such a personal thing to create your own book.
Yeah,
it sounds
and
fascinating.
one thing was I'll never forget that, because I was using the hole punch the day we were binding the books, and it was jammed, so I just opened it and all the little circles fell out. And this one girl, she just grabbed them all and she said, those are going to be the beads on my braids. And she just glued them all on the cover to make the beads on her braids. And we were all like, oh my God,
Who would ever thought of that?
So.
And so do they get to bring in photos, or if they can, but that's not our requirement?
No, we do ask them if they want to bring things in, and we in the rec center they have a photocopier, so they would photocopy the pictures and have them in. Yeah.
And could you tell us if this project is still ongoing, or did the students that participated in that, have they moved on to other things, or you've moved on to other activities or projects?
We did this program twice, in the fall and in the winter, at the same rec center. So there was one student who came back for the second time just to hang out, but they were different children, and
So you start again with a new group?
Yeah, so it's a new group. And we are hoping to do this again. We are planning to do this at Kaleidoscope for Kids, which is a program in Alexandria on the 29th and 30th of September. It's a part of a 2-month-long program, Festival of Arts. And we're going to do 3 workshops all through the day on the 30th of September, where families can come in and make a book right then and there, and at least start the process of writing the family legend. They'll identify the story and
so you kind of introduce, it's kind of a carryover from the rec center activity project.
There it was, it was just the children and me, but here, because the children will be brought to the festival by their grown-up parents, grandparents, they can do it together. So
and they do it right there.
They do it
so
right
they
there.
kind of show up and they kind of carry something away with them.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. I wanted you to talk a little bit about some of the books that you brought, because you're involved in a lot of different activities.
Right.
And I think once you share some of the books that you brought, the audience, our viewers, will see how the children were probably just fascinated and brought into that whole process, because you've been so creative yourself. Are you participating in events at the Smithsonian? Also, I believe they had a recent event.
Right. I do a lot of Heritage Month events for the Smithsonian. When they have these Family Day events that go on all day, I've designed these family storybook activities where the families can sit together and make a book out of a sheet of paper. So they get to know that it's really simple to make a book, and they write a story in it that's based on a theme of the event. For example, this book, which I call The Curious Inside-Outside Story of Bob, by Bob and Bob, is a crazy little book which looks very simple on the outside, but it's totally crazy inside. And the idea is that, on the outside we all look like whatever we look like, but inside we might have all kinds of fun things going on. And this is a story which I did for the Smithsonian's Asian Heritage Month Family Day program in May this year. Where you make a book, and this spine.
Could you just read that title for us, because I think that's so interesting, that right across the banner.
Right,
there.
it's The Curious Inside-Outside Story of Bob. And this book
do
is
you
really.
come up with those titles yourself?
I do.
Okay.
So I write the story, and I design the book, and I bind it, and I glue it all myself. And the fun thing about this is when you fold the spine over like this, it becomes a star. And the idea is that inside all of us, we are a star. And so you write your story in here. And I taught the families how to make these books on that day, and then I also read this one.
I think what's so interesting about your books and just hearing you having us have this discussion is that typically I think about a book, being bound, it's a hardback, the paper in between. But for you, I mean, a book is really, you use your imagination to the fullest, and it's much more than that. You produce products of your own imagination.
Right.
So
Oh,
have you always done this, or you just started it? Maybe you could give us a little bit about your background. Because,
Okay. I did go to art school in India. I studied applied art, and then for 20 years, I worked in advertising as an art director. So the easy part of doing this for me was to do the page layout and design the book. But when my kids were little, I decided that it was time to tell them stories about India and the rest of the world. And I thought the easiest way was to tell them stories about myself, because they already know me. And those stories are easy for me to write, because I know what happened, I know who the characters are.
Right.
I'm not very imaginative. But
You
because
bring
I was,
your art into that, your art
right, and
background.
because I was making it for my kids,
Right.
and because I don't draw very well, I thought, let's make the book be different.
Right.
If we're making it ourselves, it can be anything.
Right.
So that's how I started this. And
Maybe you can show one more.
yeah, this one, my stories,
the
I encourage multiculturalism and, asking questions. So who sits on Dadu's wall? When I show the kids this book, they're like, what's Dadu? And I'm like, read the story, and you find out that that's the word for grandfather in Bengali, my native tongue. And here is a book in which there's a story, and it says, what do you think happens next? And the kids on the back can draw the rest of the story and write the rest of it.
I thought that was so great,
Yeah,
because not only do you get a great story, but you get to use your own imagination
Absolutely.
and finish it.
Absolutely.
And it's just amazing. I call these accordion
They
books.
are
Do you
accordion
call,
books.
Is that what you call them?
Yes, they are accordion books.
I just think it's so great that a child gets to use, or whomever gets
Right.
to use their own imagination, gets to take pen or pencil or crayon
Right.
and continue with
Right.
what you've really started there.
Right.
So it's wonderful.
This book is black and white because you're supposed to, it's a story about my grandfather's house again, and this story is when my mom was 7 years old. And you color it in as you remember your grandfather's house. So again, it's similar. You're not writing the story, but you're adding colors according to your favorite flowers and things like that. So
And
I try to...
Is this where your graphic design background comes
Right.
in? Because
Right.
this is just so interesting.
Right,
That-
and-
I mean, there's so much of your senses that you use when I'm looking and reading your books. It's not just I'm reading the book from page to page, but I'm opening it up and I'm looking through it and I'm doing all kinds of things with it. It's very hands-on.
Right.
It's
Are you ready
wonderful.
to see the coolest thing about this?
Okay.
It's made out of one sheet of paper.
Oh my goodness. Does it take you a long time to think of
I've
these
been learning
things, or-
these things. I'm self-taught book artist.
Okay.
And so I've been watching a lot of videos, taking classes, and then I combine the formats with my stories.
Very, very good. I mean, we could go on and on. Also, too, I noticed one of your books, you use a lot of texture. I think this one over here, too, you use different pieces of
Right.
paper. And what's really nice about it is that your books don't have, like, in particular order or anything. You just use with the, different textures, and
Right.
you use pieces, and nothing has to be exactly perfect.
Well, this one is about the moment. So it's like, what paper do I like right now? And what do I want to put together? And then when I give it to you, you're like, how does this make me feel right now? And maybe you'll write or draw in it. So that is the idea, is to just think about the moment.
So
and,
you have books for every occasion.
the ideas keep coming.
Right, wonderful. So it's great how you can use your background, your graphic design background, and your imagination to kind of help a younger generation to get involved with books. And what's so great today, we actually have one of your students in the studio with us. We have an actual participant, and when we come back from this break, she's going to join us. We have a student participant in the Family Legends Project who's with us today. I'd like to welcome Alexis. Alexis, I'm so glad you could join us.
I'm glad I could be here too.
And I understand that you participated in the gala that was held with the Family Living Legends and the Family Legends, and
Yes.
you created your own book. So we have a picture of that. Could you tell us about that experience? What your book was about?
Well, the title was when my mom got dared. Her 6 brothers dared her to go on 5 feet of snow. And at the end, their mother found out and they both got in trouble.
Oh my goodness, and what is the title of your book?
It, when my mom got dared.
Oh, when my mom got dared.
Yeah.
So she took them up on the dare.
Yeah,
And her brothers did they get in trouble or just your mom?
all.
They all got in trouble.
Yes.
That was kind of like maybe a lesson for you?
Yeah.
Not to take a dare? No, not really? No.
Yeah, sort of.
So was it fun making the book?
Yes.
How often did you go? Was it every week? You went like every
Yeah.
week you got
Yeah.
to do? How long did it take you? Where did you get your ideas? Did you come up with it like the day you went in? You say, oh, I have an idea, or did you have to think about it for a while?
Well, I had to think about for 5 minutes.
Oh, just 5 minutes. Well, you had lots of time to work on your book, so you knew what you wanted to write about.
Yeah.
And then did you draw any of the pictures, or
Yes.
did the pictures, you did that week by week?
Well, actually, I only drew 1 picture.
And you were shown how to put the book together? Did
Yes.
you put the book together yourself?
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And would you like to tell us about the cover of your book? How did you make the cover? Do you remember what you did on the cover? Because it was, you wanted to make it the snow. How did you make the snow?
With kind of clear white pieces of paper, and I put them all over.
I
next to
remember that because we were scared that there were little bits were going to fall off. And then you drew your mom and you made some hearts, right? And how old was your mom when this happened?
About 9.
Ah, that's awesome.
And how old are you?
8.
8. Oh, okay. So that's something that could have happened to you, right?
Yes.
She was about your age,
Yeah.
so you could really identify with that.
Yes.
What was it like? I believe you have shown your book to a group.
Yes.
How did you feel standing in front of the group and sharing your book?
Well, I didn't feel scared. I felt normal.
You felt normal,
Yes.
and you felt maybe proud? Were you proud to show your
Yeah.
book off?
Yes. Oh, and there was this one guy, and he said, yeah, go on with the dare.
Oh, yay, go on with the dare.
Yeah.
And the people clapping after you shared your book?
Yes.
The audience clapped?
Mhm.
Well, that was exciting. Did you give out any autographs?
No.
No? That's coming later?
Mm.
Maybe. You think you might want to make another book? Have you had ideas for another book?
Not really, but...
Oh, I bet you have. You just don't want to tell us. You don't have to tell us right now.
I
You
don't
going
know if I
to get an
have.
agent?
No.
No? Okay. All right. But which of Susha's book do you like? Do you like any of you have a favorite?
Yes, this one.
And what do you like about that book?
Because it's very creative when it turns into a house. And also that it's only 1 page.
I think that's probably the most interesting part, because it looks like, I don't know, like she put so many pieces
Yeah.
together, but it is only one. Do you think you might design a book like this one day?
I think I have. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yours open?
Yeah.
to-
I did
oh,
a similar book format for the Youth Arts Festival in Alexandria, where the books the children made in the rec center were displayed, and she came there and made some more stuff, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite part? Do you like the writing more, or the designing, or do you like all of it?
Well, I like the writing.
Like the writing more? I think that's what I really would enjoy about a book.
Yeah.
And how much did you write? Did you write like a little bit at a time? You wrote for like 10 minutes here, or you had the ideas in your head and then you would write a little bit and then come back to it later? Or did you, once you started writing, you just kept writing?
I had ideas in my head, and then I kept on writing, and then I took a break, kept on writing, took a break, you know.
Yeah, you have to take breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you put it together, you have some. So is it with you now? You've kept it? You have it in a special place?
Actually, I have no idea where it is.
Oh my goodness! Well, that happens when you're 8, right? Okay. No, we won't talk about that. It's okay. All right. Well, this has been just fascinating. I just love the whole project, and I hope that. Do you think you'll continue to write and maybe draw a little bit? You do some of that in school anyway, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I did write a story for my homework.
You've written a story for your homework.
Yeah.
So that was good practice, participating in that project.
Yes.
Well, it's been great having you with us, and it was just so wonderful to see that in the end, after you did all that hard work,
Mm-hmm.
you had something to show for it.
Yes, I did.
So maybe now you'll go maybe blow the dust off of it and put it in the living room. So when people come over, they can take a look at your book. Maybe?
Maybe.
Well, this has been really fascinating. Oh, I wanted to ask you too, did you talk to any of the other children while they were making their books? Were their stories interesting too? Did you
Yes.
learn a lot from the other children?
Yes, one of my friends, her name is Salome. She's the one who is scared of this camel when she went to Ethiopia.
So you had
She-
international stories too, so some of the
Yes.
children had traveled different places.
Mhm.
That's very interesting. So that was part of the process too. That sounds like a wonderful project. You were very lucky to participate in that. So you know what I want to do now? I just want to say thank you to Alexis and thank you to Sush for joining me today. And this has been probably the most wonderful show. It's just been so exciting to see all the books and hear your stories. So please join us again next time for On the Go with AAUW for another entertaining and informative show.
Thank you.